More people are leaving California's biggest cities than at any point in recent memory, and the trend is reshaping the entire state. Redfin's latest migration reports keep placing California at the top of the outbound list, and the cities seeing the strongest declines aren't always the ones people expect. The data paints a picture that feels almost surreal. Places once seen as untouchable hubs of opportunity are now watching residents pack up and head out in record numbers. And before we break down the 10 cities losing the most people, make sure you hit subscribe. I post deep dive breakdowns using real data, and you won't want to miss what's coming next. California has always had high prices, but something changed in the last few years. CAR's affordability index hit historically low levels, with only about 15% to 17% of households able to buy a median-priced home. That number alone would push migration, but add in remote work reshuffling, rising insurance premiums, and long-term cost pressures, and it becomes clear why the outflow keeps accelerating. The most surprising part is how widespread this pattern is. It's not just the major coastal cities anymore. Even inland metros that were once considered the affordable alternative are now seeing people walk away. Let's start with the city that still grabs the most national attention. San Francisco remains the symbol of California's outbound migration. Redfin regularly lists it as one of the top 5 metros people are leaving. The reasons stack up fast. Steep housing prices, a shift in office demand, and a remote work culture that took hold and never fully loosened. Many workers realized they didn't need to pay Bay Area prices to keep their jobs, and when their leases ended, they didn't look back. Redfin tracks a steady flow of San Francisco residents heading to Seattle, Denver, Austin, and even smaller markets like Sacramento during the early boom period. But the real twist came afterward, because as those secondary cities started rising in price, they even lost the newcomers they had gained. Still, San Francisco's story stands out because it's the first domino. Once the world's most expensive tech magnet, now a place where thousands decide each quarter that the price simply isn't worth it. And yet, San Francisco isn't even the city with the highest number of people leaving total. Larger cities are taking even bigger hits. Los Angeles is next, and its outflow is driven by one simple reality. LA's middle-income households are getting squeezed from all sides. Redfin's migration dashboards show that Los Angeles consistently ranks among the top outbound metros in the country. CAR's affordability numbers in LA County are some of the lowest in the state, making buying a home nearly impossible for the average family. Even renting isn't offering relief, as rising rates and insurance costs hit budget after budget. Families who've lived in LA for generations are now comparing their monthly numbers with what they would pay in places like Phoenix, Dallas, or Las Vegas, and the difference is startling. It's not a small shift, it's a steady, data-backed migration. People aren't leaving because they dislike LA. Many love the culture, weather, and lifestyle. They're leaving because they've run the math, and it simply doesn't work. But if you think LA's losses are huge, the next city reveals a different kind of pressure, one that hits even the highest earners. San Jose and the rest of Silicon Valley are dealing with a quiet but powerful demographic shift. Even high-income households are reevaluating the cost of staying in the tech capital of the world. Redfin's relocation patterns show rising outbound searches as residents explore Seattle, Austin, Denver, and even more affordable California counties. The tech layoffs of the past few years accelerated the trend. Workers who once saw the Bay Area as their only option suddenly realized the global job market had opened. With remote-friendly positions and new tech hubs growing across the U.S., staying in one of the most expensive housing markets on the planet became harder to justify. Silicon Valley will always be a major economic force, but even top earners have limits. And once they move, others tend to follow. But the next city shows how even the winners of the pandemic boom couldn't hold that momentum. Sacramento's story is one of the most surprising in California. During the early stages of remote work, Sacramento boomed as Bay Area workers moved inland for more space and slightly better affordability. Prices jumped fast, inventory dried up, and demand pushed the market into overdrive. But the boom didn't last. Redfin now shows Sacramento with consistent outbound traffic as the people who once saw it as a refuge from coastal prices eventually faced the same affordability crunch. The stunning rise in home values pushed many buyers out, and even long-term residents felt the pressure. Insurance costs climbed, and the cost gap between Sacramento and the out-of-state options shrank. Suddenly, Sacramento wasn't the affordable alternative anymore. It became another stop on the migration path out of California. And that leads directly into the inland markets that were supposed to be the last safe zone for affordability. Fresno has long been seen as a more budget-friendly area within California, but that advantage weakened quickly. Prices rose faster than incomes, widening the gap and pushing residents to consider cheaper options beyond the state line. Redfin's data shows strong migration out of Fresno toward nearby Central Valley towns and out-of-state destinations like Nevada and Texas. The economic pressure hits harder here because incomes tend to be lower relative to coastal regions. When costs spike in places where wages don't keep pace, even modest increases can tip people into relocation. Add that to rising utility and insurance expenses, and the migration trend becomes predictable and persistent. But if Fresno represents affordability pressure from one angle, the next city shows how compounding costs can turn even historically inexpensive areas into departure zones. Stockton and the greater San Joaquin County region illustrate what happens when rising costs hit a community that once depended on its affordability identity. Stockton was long considered one of California's most accessible cities for buyers and renters. But that's no longer the case. Redfin shows consistent outbound migration as residents calculate the difference between Stockton pricing and what they could get in Texas, Nevada, or parts of the Midwest. The shift isn't dramatic all at once. It's more like a steady drip that becomes a flow. When a region used to being cheap by comparison becomes simply less expensive than San Francisco, the equation breaks down and people begin to reconsider their options. The next city on this list is a coastal metro with a reputation for being desirable. And even if it isn't immune to the trend, San Diego's departure numbers might surprise people because the city still enjoys strong demand and a high quality of life. But Redfin's migration data shows that San Diego is net negative. More people leave than move in. The reason isn't complicated. San Diego's housing market is one of the most expensive in the state, and CAR's affordability numbers confirm it remains far out of reach for the majority of households. Even well-paid workers struggle to buy a home, and renters face some of the steepest rates in the region. This combination creates a pressure point where even long-term residents begin to explore other options. What makes San Diego's story interesting is that people still want to live there, they just can't afford to. And that brings us to the city that may reveal the clearest sign of how migration patterns have evolved statewide. Riverside and San Bernardino, the heart of the Inland Empire, represent one of the most dramatic transformations in California's housing landscape. Once the refuge for families priced out of Los Angeles and Orange County, this region became the go-to destination for affordability. But that affordability disappeared faster than expected. Prices surged during the pandemic, competition intensified, and the Inland Empire shifted from cheap to simply less expensive than the coast. Redfin shows a steady outward push as residents seek lower costs in Arizona, Nevada, Texas, and the Southeast. Insurance expenses have also played a role, as certain areas face rising premiums that strain budgets. Transportation costs increase the burden as well, especially for commuters. The region is now part of the same outward flow that once sent newcomers its way, completing the migration cycle that has shaped the state over the last decade. And taken together, these 10 cities tell a clear story. California's outbound migration isn't driven by a single factor. It's the cumulative effect of affordability dropping to record lows, insurance problems hitting certain regions, job shifts reshaping tech hubs, and residents realizing they have more relocation options than ever before. Some cities are losing people slowly, others more rapidly, but the direction is the same. The state is undergoing a major demographic reshuffling, and the meaning of expensive city, affordable city, and opportunity city has changed completely. The biggest question now is what comes next. Are these cities on the verge of a long-term population reset, where prices stabilize and new opportunities open? Or is this simply the beginning of a deeper shift in where Americans decide to live? The data will keep evolving, and I'll break it all down as it happens. Make sure you subscribe for more data-driven breakdowns on the markets shaping the future. And let me know in the comments which cities surprised you the most.